Well, I want to welcome you to the ITS School of Real Estate, and specifically this Chapter 1 of the video series to accompany the home study course. Now, this is Part 1 of Chapter 1. Now, this video is going to be unique compared to the other videos because there are going to be many viewers of this video who have found this video on the website because you're looking for a school to take your required 90 hours of education to become a licensed real estate agent. And for others of you, you've already made the decision, you've purchased the course, and now you're starting with the home study course. So for this first video, I'm going to talk to both parties and we'll work through it. But by Chapter 2, we'll be back full speed, moving on for just the students. But for this first part of the video series, I want to go over an introduction of what is required of you as a student and what this course will entail. So let's get started first by saying what is required of you as a real estate professional. You will be required to take two courses here at the school. First, the 60-hour principles of real estate, and second, a course for new affiliates. Now, both of these courses are included in the $199 package, and as a student, you will have both of them delivered to your home. The video series is going to cover specifically the 60-hour course. The 30-hour course for new affiliates, these topics are going to be touched on. We're going to have a couple accompaniment videos to cover a few of the like the CMA simulation and a couple of the contract simulation, but a lot of the 30-hour course is more procedural in the sense this is practice or simulations of what you will do on your first real estate listing. So we will cover that off and on as we go through this 60-hour course. But let's get started with what we have in the box for you. In the box, as you already see, we have a picture on the screen for you, or if you're a student, you've already purchased, you've got it right in front of you. You're going to have two different sets of books here. The bound from the factory textbook, or the Real Estate Fundamentals by Paul Gaddy, that is what we're going to refer to as the textbook from this point forward. The in-house material produced by the ITS School of Real Estate, the two books with the Attractive Woman Real Estate Agent on the front, and then the Course for New Affiliates with the For Sale sign. These are going to be referred to as workbooks from here on out. So when I say textbook, we're talking about the Paul Gaddy. When we say workbooks, we're talking about the material that's produced right here in-house. So, and of course, then you'll have your testing platform. As a student, you will receive a unique login where you can take your test online. When we first started selling the course, we provided the students with printed answer sheets and hard copy tests. This was a little bit of a problem for students because they weren't getting instant feedback. They didn't know what kind of grades they were getting as they moved through the course, and sometimes they would get to the final and have a surprise. By doing testing as we go along chapter by chapter online with instant grading, you know how you're doing. You know if you're not covering the material as well as you should, and it gives you some feedback. I've been hearing from students that was a drawback. I think we are the first school to incorporate this into a home study course. It allows you to have all the strengths of a hard textbook right in front of your hand with the strengths of an online course. This is still a paper and pencil correspondence course. We do allow students to use the paper and pencil test. We prefer they use the online test just because that's 400 questions I don't have to grade by hand. But of course, if you do not have access to the internet, we will provide you this one way or the other. So let's get started with what this course and this video series is going to entail. Now, let's look at the first page of your workbook. This is an introduction into Chapter 1. The very first question, what is a brokerage? Right next to that question, there's a number in brackets. I think it's page number 20 if you're in the current issue. As we move forward, the page numbers may change. But what is a brokerage? And we provide you a text number. The reason we do that is every single question we charge as we move forward we're going to give you the page number or a law citation to find the answer. We're not going to give you the answer every time, but we're going to make it easy for you to go straight to the textbook and find the answer. I don't want you to have to spend 30 minutes going through the index and tracking down these answers. One, that's wasted time, that's busy time. You're learning just as much if you turn straight to the right page of the textbook. So I don't feel I'm doing anything wrong by providing you the textbook page. I believe that speeds up your study time and that gets you through this first chapter just that much quicker. So there it is. What is a brokerage? The answer is simply this. A brokerage is in the business of bringing people together, specifically a buyer and a seller. Now, let's not talk about real estate right now. Let's talk about just commercial in the general sense, commerce in the general sense. Let's say you are a travel agent. What is your business? What is your brokerage as a travel agent? Well, obviously, you are going to bring travelers together with travel providers. That might be an airline, a cruise ship, a bus tour. You are a meeting point of two different parties. One party is a service provider, and one party is seeking a service. They may not know what type of travel service they want. They come to your office and they look at the options and you bring together the right parties. That is a brokerage. Ultimately, as real estate professionals, you will serve as a conduit of meeting two different parties. The word salesman is often misconstrued in the real estate business. It is not your job, and you need to always try to avoid going out there and selling someone a house. One, this is probably the biggest purchase they're going to make in their life. They don't need a high pressure salesman pushing them. They need a real estate professional to act as a tour guide, to act as a consultant, and to act as a confidant. This is your job. It is not your job to pick out a house for them and shove it down their throat. Yes, there are agents out there that do that, but they don't stay in the business very long. You are training today to be a real estate professional. Let's look at the next question. And through this first couple pages of the first chapter, we're going to hit real estate terms. We're going to we need a working vocabulary. As we work deeper into this course, we need to know who the players are in a real estate transaction. We need to know what their job is, and we need to move forward with a set of real estate terms we all agree on, and we know where we're moving forward. So the next one is, what is an appraisal? An appraisal is the formal process of estimating a property's value. Now, as we move through this first 60-hour course, we're going to spend a whole chapter on economic valuation and valuation methods. And then in the 30-hour course, we're going to provide you a simulation where you're going to sit down with a simulated couple, a simulated house, and we're going to ask you, all right, here's the facts. What's this house worth? Now, that may seem like a daunting task now, but as we move through and we talk about economic principles, we talk about comparative market analysis, it's never easy, but it's not as hard as you might think it is right now. We're going to work through it, and by the time we get to the 30-hour course and by chapter 5 where we do the simulation, you're going to be prepared to do it. But right now, what am I looking for out of chapter 1? I want you to see the word appraisal and know that appraisal is the formal process of estimating a property's value. All right, what's the next question? What does a property manager do? Okay, simply said, not everybody sitting in this class or watching this video is going to be in the business of selling residential real estate. Some people are going to be simply buying for their own personal use. They may buy to rent. They may buy to flip their own personal homes. They may be strictly commercial. And some people may be strictly representing homeowners who are looking to rent their property, not sell their property. A property manager is a person hired to maintain or manage a property on behalf of the property owner. Now, in this economy, more and more people are renting. So the real estate profession will begin to see more and more people specialize in just property management. In my career, I have done a lot of property management. In many ways, I enjoy this more than residential sales. it can often be more lucrative than residential sales for you as a real estate professional. It's a different set of minds. It's a different mindset. It can be a little harsh. There are things a property manager has to do that are, well, some people don't pay their rent and they have to be removed. They whine, they cry, they get upset. Sometimes these people you remove have kids. Sometimes these kids have to be removed at Christmas time. These are all part of the property management business. It can be a rough business, but it has some very rewarding upsides. We'll talk about that as we move forward. But just moving forward, I just want to go over the players in the real estate business, and that one I think we've covered for now. What does a property manager do? So what's the next one? What is financing and who are the parties involved? Okay, just like we're talking about with property managers, not everybody is going to be dealing directly with the clients or the home buyers, the home renters, the home sellers. There is a whole nother segment of the real estate profession that just deals with the financing side. We have mortgage brokers, we have bankers, we have title insurance companies, we have closing companies. So I want you to think from the very beginning that the financing side of the real estate profession, they are players in the real estate business. They are very important players in the real estate business. If you don't think so, have a buyer, have a seller, and have the financing fall through, and you will see just how important they are. So financing is the business of providing funds for the purchase or for the development of real estate. Usually the property to be purchased is leveraged as a security for the loan. Now we're going to cover this more in other chapters. I just want you to know at this point in time that property is leveraged or hypothecated. We're going to cover that later. And the parties involved will be the lender and home buyer directly. Indirectly, you have mortgage brokers, we were talking about that before, closing attorneys, appraisals, and possibly several realtors. Often, both sides of the transactions are represented by individual realtors. Very rarely will you represent both the buyer and seller, so there's usually two realtors involved. Now, these are all the players that are directly or indirectly involved, and then there's always the possibility for other players. Sometimes with short sales, you get even the banks involved. All right. What's the next one we're moving for? What are the 5 types of real estate specializations? Number 1, the most common, the one you're probably thinking about when you take this course, residential. This is probably 80% of the real estate market, residential. It is the most common form of real property sale. It is what 80% of you will specialize in. 80% of you will never even venture out of this one right here, residential real estate sales. But there is 4 others that are very specialized, can be very lucrative, and you don't want to shy away from them. This is opportunities. You move forward in your career, you want to learn about these. Number 2, commercial real estate sales. This can be anything from retail all the way up to huge factories. Now, you see number 3 is industrial. Don't get confused. I said commercial is anything other than residential. So you have residential and everything else is commercial. We will divide commercial into subsections. But right now I want you to know you have residential or you have commercial. That's 100% of the sales. There are 5 specializations, but there are residential properties and everything else is commercial. Number 3, industrial. This is a subset of commercial. Now, industrial is something other than retail, gas stations. This is factories, small factories, manufacturing. This is a more specialized form of commercial real estate sales. Specialized because they're often environmental, legal, property planning considerations that go into this. A person that specializes in industrial real estate sales usually has a very firm grasp of either engineering, they might be an accountant, they may have governmental contacts, this might be someone who served time in government. This is a very specialized form of real estate sales. Generally, it is incorporating an additional skill set or a past occupation they had with real estate. Very rarely do you see somebody just break into the real estate field and go straight to industrial, unless they were already an accountant, a government official, or an engineer, or maybe someone who specializes in environmental science, etc. Number 4, agricultural. Now, agricultural, I have students sometimes wanting to put into residential, and I'm okay with that. There are hobby farms out there, someone who has 5 acres, a horse, a cow, a couple chickens, and they consider themselves farmers. It's a hobby farm. When I say agricultural in the subset of commercial, I mean a working farm that is producing an income. I mean a farm where you have 100, 200, 1,000 acres, and this piece of land has one purpose: to produce an income. Part of the value of that land will be tied to its income. This is not to be confused with a hobby farm, which is just someone's residence that has agricultural tendencies. So when I say agricultural property, I want you to think of a working farm where you're making a living off it or trying to make a living. Maybe it employs people. I want you to think of hobby farms. I want you to take a hobby farm and I want you to put that in residential. Agricultural, when it's in the commercial setting, is a large farm producing an income. Hobby farm, it's a subsection of the residential real estate profession. And number 5, special purpose. What is special purpose? Well, just we could come up with 100 examples. There might be Agent John out there who specializes in selling airports, not just maybe huge metropolitan airports like the Nashville B&A airport. We're talking there are some people who have private airstrips in their backyard. We have one right down the street here. He has a little sign and a radio frequency, and it's a working airport. You can look on a local map around here, and it's got an airport signal. When you ever went to sell that property, that would be a very specialized piece of property to sell, and quite frankly, I'm not sure I'd be qualified to sell that, but I'm sure there's someone in Tennessee who knows how to sell small airstrips. That would be very clearly a specialized type of real estate sale. Now the next question, what is a seller's market? Well, unless you've been living in a cave somewhere, the last 5 years the real estate business has not been a seller's market. A seller's market versus a buyer's market takes us back to school when we studied supply and demand graphs. Supply goes up, demand goes down. Where those two X and Y cross, that's the most probable market price. But let's talk about this specifically as how it relates to the last 5 years. There is an unbelievable glut of homes on the market right now. Sellers are competing like crazy for the very few buyers that are out there. Therefore, we are currently in a buyer's market. If you want to be a buyer, if at all possible right now, you do not want to be a seller, because houses are selling at historic lows and there are just some deals out there. There are some really, really good deals out there. That's great if you're a buyer. That's not so great if you're a seller. So what is a seller's market? This is when there is a shortage of product and the increased demand for a limited resource creates an increase in prices. Yeah, that's not what's happening now. What's happening now is a buyer's market. This is when there is an overabundant supply of goods that exceeds the demand, and this creates a decrease in prices. That's the situation we're in now. We're in a situation where there are thousands of homes on the market. There are thousands of homes being purchased by banks and just put into inventory, which means those houses are going to have to be sold a couple years from now. So even after we get out of this mess, then we're going to have to dig out of the hole of all the foreclosed homes that the banks are going to be selling. So, I don't mean to scare you, but I'm telling you that we're in a situation now that it's going to take a lot of years to get this excess inventory off the market. So we are currently in a buyer's market because there is an excess of homes, there's an excess or abundant supply, and a limited demand. If this ever turns around to the point where there's more buyers than there are sellers, then we would be in a seller's market. This question very likely will be asked on the real estate exam. Will it be asked exactly like I'm framing it now? I don't know, probably not. But it is going to ask you very clearly to be able to delineate between a buyer's and a seller's market. They want to see that you understand supply and demand, because if you don't understand how supply interacts with demand, you're not going to be able to accurately consult your clients on probable home prices. There are houses that were purchased for $300,000 5 years ago that today are worth $200,000. These people have not trashed their house. The house is better condition it was then. There's just not the demand when it was priced at $300,000. The buyers sometimes look for you for an answer why. You can't give them an exact answer why. You can just give them a simple answer. When you bought this house, there were thousands of buyers and there were hundreds of homes for sale. Now there's thousands of homes for sale and there's only 100 buyers. Prices are going to have to come down because the buyers have the ability to be picky and have the ability to dictate terms. Prices have and will remain low until this glut of homes is removed from the market. Next question. What are the two factors that influence supply? Now this is a situation that you might be tested on the real estate exam. I don't want you to go through here and memorize every one of these, but just think about the concept. Have the concept in the back of your mind, because when you read their question, I want you to look at this factor and go, how does this affect the decision as a buyer or as a seller? What are two factors that influence supply? One, labor force and construction cost. Okay, let's just put this in a hypothetical situation. All right, influencing supply. Okay, we're thinking about supply. Number of houses on the market. Supply, you see that word supply? I want you to replace that with number of houses on the market. Labor force. Okay, labor force. Okay, that's people with good jobs. Let's say labor force, that means people with good jobs. If you're in a town with 1,000 factory workers that have good jobs, all of them lose their job. Okay, that's bad. That means they're probably going to sell their house. That means there's going to be 1,000 houses on the market that were not on the market yesterday. 1,000 extra houses on the market with no extra buyers, bad. Prices are going to go down. Okay, well, that makes sense. Let's do the flip side. We have a factory with 1,000 workers. The factory announces it will be hiring 1,000 additional workers. Okay, so a town has 10,000 houses, has 10,000 people, but all of a sudden it's going to hire an additional 1,000 people. So all of a sudden there's going to be a bunch of new factory workers looking to buy a house, and there's a very limited supply of houses. Prices are going to go through the roof. So labor force, the number of workers, can affect the supply of houses both up and down. We have to look at the prevailing economic conditions and know how. Construction cost. This is a situation like with Hurricane Katrina. Lumber prices spiked. I mean, they went through the roof. Therefore, it costs a lot more to build a house. A lot of builders just cut back on the number of houses they were building till the prices settled down. This created a temporary shortage in new house starts. Therefore, the number of buyers was unchanged, but the number of houses decreased. Therefore, supply went down, so there was a temporary bump in prices up. Construction cost often relates to either governmental factors or natural disaster factors. Number two, governmental controls and financial policies. This is what the government does to either slow down or speed up the housing market. Governmental controls. In my county here in Rutherford County, Tennessee, we are going through a nasty zoning debate at the county level, trying to decide how many houses can be built per acre. Currently, the number was 5. The mayor wanted it to be 1, and it looks like we've compromised on 3. Now, why does this matter? My county is running out of land. Houses are starting to be built on top of each other. There was concern that we were becoming too metropolitan style. We were becoming a little Nashville, in other words. So the mayor wanted to slow down building and spread the houses out. Okay, well, that may make things seem more quaint, more country, and more livable, but what he is effectively doing is limiting the number of houses in Rutherford County. Therefore, prices will go up. That's a situation there where governmental controls will slow down building and raise property prices. You know, as a politician, he's also probably thinking that raises property taxes. So, and you know, as a politicians, they do slow down economies. they do slow down building because they don't have to build as many schools. So don't kid yourself. The government does one or two things. It slows down real estate business or it speeds it up. An example of speeding up the real estate business would be financial policies such as the $8,000 buyer's credit put on by President Obama. Now, this is not a political course, and I generally don't say that many nice things about President Obama, but what he did with that $8,000 buyer's credit was a good thing. Okay? Um, it was a time where we needed some house sales. We were in dire needs. People needed to sell some houses. That $8,000 buyer's credit got people off the fence. There were people who were not ready to make a home sale or a home purchase, and they did. I mean, they moved forward. That's an example of a financial or a governmental policy helping the economy. Like I said, we will have to talk a little politics as we move forward in this course. We'll try to keep it neutral, and we'll kind of try to talk about it just as it relates to the business field. That $8,000 buyer's credit, I believed it was a good thing. It was an example of a governmental policy that sped up or increased both supply and demand. I believe it increased demand more than it increased supply. That's why there was a temporary bump in prices. Next slide. What are 3 factors that influence demand? Okay, now many of these we have already gone over because, as economic conditions change both the buyers and it changes for both the sellers. So now we're talking about demand, buyers. Population. If 1,000 new people move into your town because the factory has increased, that is an example of more buyers. That's a change in demand. That's a population change. Demographics. Demographics affects buyers in the sense that if the economy is roaring, both white and blue collar potential buyers see their pay going up at the same rate. In this recession, we've seen the blue collar worker get hurt much more by this recession than other recessions. So that's an example of the demographics of your buyer may be affected. If you're selling a home that is geared towards a doctor, a lawyer, someone who makes a lot more money, that house may get hurt at a lower percentage than a house that's geared at a starter home or someone who works a blue-collar factory job. Blue-collar factory jobs have really been hurt in this recession. So that's an example there how demand can be affected, not across the board, but be affected at an income level. Okay, so I want you to think about population, and when you see demographics, I just want you to take that word and think income level. Sometimes the recession hurts different income levels at a different rate. So let's just think about demographics. I want you to see demographics, and I want you to think income level. Next one, employment versus unemployment. Well, we've just been talking about those in the first two. This nation is currently at this point in time at 8.2% unemployment. Unemployment seemed to be going down. Now it seems to be going back up. As unemployment goes back up, there will be less and less buyers. Fewer and fewer buyers. As fewer and fewer buyers look to buy a house, we're going to have more and more people becoming unemployed, so we're going to have more and more sellers. So that's a bad situation where you have more sellers and fewer buyers. That means prices, if this unemployment trend continues going up, prices are going to go down. That's just unfortunate, but that's just the way it's going to be. These few things in life are certain, but I can pretty much tell you can take that to the bank. If unemployment goes up, home prices are going down. Now, I believe that's a good place to stop for this part 1 of chapter 1. As we come back to part number 2, we're going to start talking real estate as it refers to the land. We're going to talk about land. We're going to talk about property. We're going to talk about real property. We're going to talk about personal property. We're going to start talking about some generic terms, some vocabulary that we can move through the rest of the chapter. For those of you who are watching this website who maybe haven't made the decision whether or not to purchase or use the ITS School of Real Estate, I hope you get a feel of what we're doing here. I'm not the world's best speaker. I say hum, I cough on the video. This video is not going to win any awards at the Academy. It's not Emmy award-winning production. what it is trying to do is it's trying to work you through the textbook and give you as close to possible as what you would get if you were in a class with me one-on-one or in a classroom setting. Um, I understand it's a daunting task to try to take this course at home by yourself. That's the purpose of these videos. The purpose of these videos is so you can sit down in front of your computer and let's work through this textbook together. You know, it's 250 pages. It's it's a lot of work. But these videos, we're going to go through them one by one, and then you'll go to the website, you'll take the test. We'll get through this process together. I'm always available by email. My phone's generally answered during normal business hours. We will get through this together. You will have success. If you apply the time, you will have success. This is a pretty good example of how it's going to be for the course. It's not going to be real exciting, but we're going to get it done, and I think you're going to have success. So, like I said, that's the end of part 1 of chapter 1. We're going to come back here in just a second, and we're going to do part number 2. I'd like to see each and every one of you try to do 2 or 3 videos a night. That's a pretty good um, rhythm. That would have you taking a test about every 2 or 3 days, and that would have you getting through the course in about 2 weeks. I think that's pretty good pace. At that rate, I think you're well on your way to being a real estate professional in about a month. So that's what you're looking at. If you work at this pace, you can have your exam out of the way and be sitting down at your desk in about a month. And so that's the goal. So let's make it happen.